Make my day.
Clint Eastwood on that screen was an immediate mythic presence in movies.
He exemplifies the true, quiet, strong, heroic guy.
Who are you?
He is the living, breathing embodiment of cool.
In all of his life, he keeps his simplicity.
Action slated printed shoot.
He is his own person.
Clint doesn't compromise himself.
I've been very lucky.
Clint Eastwood, next on Biography.
In May of 2003, Clint Eastwood arrived at France's Cannes Film Festival for the premiere of his 24th film as a director, the drama Mystic River, starring Sean Penn, Tim Robbins, Kevin Bacon, and Lawrence Fishburne. Mystic River was a tough look at crime, justice, and the impact of violence on its survivors, themes that have long fascinated Eastwood during his half a century in the cinema. Critics called the film bold and uncompromising, qualities shared by Eastwood himself, who has spent a lifetime refining an image of strength and responsibility, both on and off the screen.
A lot of his roles, he's playing a lot of different parts of him. One minute he's got that kind of calm, cool thing, and the next minute he can be very strong.
You gotta ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
And you can't quite figure him out.
I was just picking you some flowers.
Oh?
Men still do that, don't they?
The image of this, Clint Eastwood is Dirty Harry, is really not true. He's much more of a Renaissance kind of man.
Clinton Eastwood Jr. was born on May 31st, 1930, at St. Francis Hospital in San Francisco. Clint made news from the start. He was said to be the biggest baby born that year in St. Francis.
He was the star of the hospital. He weighed 11.5 pounds, and so they took him around to show all the other mothers what they could have done. I thought he was special from the start.
Eastwood's father, Clinton Sr., had been a successful bond salesman before the Great Depression. Now, with his loyal wife, Ruth, he was forced to travel across California in search of a job.
They were pretty well victimized by, the sheer difficulty of getting a job. And his father, at one point, he was pumping gas at a service station up in Pacific Palisades. I mean, it was tough times.
Clint never forgot the struggles of his family's early years. And although he drew confidence from his parents' love and support, he had a tougher time forming close friendships due to their constant moves.
Well, it wasn't a lot of fun because as a kid, you'd always like to stay in the same neighborhood with the same friends that you know, and I think that's the ideal way everybody would like to grow up. But with me, it didn't work that way.
He was also the new kid in class, and so I think he was very much thrown on his own resources.
He was just kind of a dreamer. He had a lot of imagination, and it was always kind of running away with him. He used to play with a friend of his, and they'd cover themselves with ketchup and fall down dead, scare everybody.
Clint and his younger sister, Jean, found support not only from their parents, but from their grandmother, Virginia. At her home and small chicken ranch, he also began a lifelong love of animals.
And he had snakes and rats and mice and guinea pigs.
We had 13 water snakes. One day I was shampooing my hair and he wrapped one in a towel. And I picked up my towel and here was the water snake. So I said, they've got to go. So they did. He brought the box down and they went all over the garden. And I think the neighbors probably had water snakes from then on.
In 1940, work took the Eastwoods to San Francisco. They settled in nearby Piedmont. And for the first time, Clint got a taste of stability. By now, he had grown from a gangly boy into a handsome 6-foot-tall teenager, one who was comfortable spending time by himself as he earned much-needed money through countless part-time jobs.
If you wanted anything, if you wanted enough money to go to movies or buy lunch or something, you had to do that. I think any time a person has a job and learns the responsibility of handling money it's a great lesson.
Between jobs, Clint also developed a passion for cars. He acquired his first auto, a '32 Chevy, at age 15.
We used to have what he called a modified car. It was slightly illegal, I think, because the police were always looking for him whenever he'd drive it.
Clint's other passion was jazz.
When I grew up in the 40s as a kid, my mother brought home these Fats Waller records, and I liked them. Then I started listening to him play, and the way he played the piano and everything, and I felt the humor, and then I played a little bit of piano, so I would start trying to imitate the records.
Clint plays kind of a honky-tonk piano, and there was a couple pubs around Oakland where we would go down, we're underage, but in those days it didn't make a whole lot of difference, where we would go down there and he would play the piano and we'd get free beer for him playing the piano.
I went to a party one time and wasn't expressing myself very well around the young ladies, so I sat down and I played a ragtime tune, and all of a sudden they're all over going, hey, I didn't know you could do that, and I thought, oh yeah, this isn't bad. I'm going to go home and practice.
Oh, girls. He was besieged with girls. They used to call all the time. He didn't have a chance.
Between dates, Eastwood and his buddies went joyriding to the jazz clubs of Oakland and even Los Angeles, drinking beer and admiring the cool of musicians like Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, and a saxophone genius named Charlie Parker.
He was always innovative, but then all of the so-called bebop musicians of the 40s were guys who marched to their own drummer. They obviously weren't placating the audience or begging the audience to come buy my records, come love my music.
Clint calls them outlaws in jazz, you know. It becomes part of a sensibility because it's not only just the music, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking, it's a lifestyle.
Clint's own lifestyle was rattled in 1951 when the 20-year-old was drafted at the dawn of the Korean War and sent to basic training in Fort Ord, California.
I think there's a fair amount of inward fuming. You know, he has a real suspicion of bureaucracies, in particular military bureaucracies. I mean, there was an inner withholding of himself from institutions.
Clint found solace from the Army in the sleepy nearby town of Carmel, which he visited every chance he could. And as luck would have it, he never saw action in Korea. Instead, Eastwood spent most of his Army time monitoring the swimming pool at Fort Ord. Among the soldiers he met during his poolside duties was a young actor named David Jansen.
I met David at Fort Ord, and in fact, I made him put out his cigarette. He was coming through the swimming program.
Clint asked him what he did, and David said he was an actor. And David said, well, it's easy. Just go out to Universal, you know, and they'll sign you.
Clint kind of got a hint, you know, I never thought about acting, but I could be an actor. Why not?
After the Army, Eastwood added acting to his list of possible careers. But one thing the available bachelor didn't plan on doing was settling down. That changed after a blind date with a Berkeley sorority beauty named Margaret Johnson. Clint was intrigued by the attractive blonde's lack of pretension and her sharp sense of humor.
Maggie she was just like a down-home gal. She was terrific. She was always interested in really taking care of Clint.
Clint was in love, and on December 19th, 1953, the couple married. But within months, the 24-year-old Eastwood became restless in his new domestic role.
He said to me a couple of times that, you know, he doesn't think that he was at all ready for marriage. But in the 50s, if you were a young guy or a young woman, you were supposed to settle down, move to the suburbs. I think neither of those people was especially ready for that.
The newlyweds also needed money. In 1954, the would-be actor took David Jansen's advice and tested at Universal, then a B-movie studio.